The ocean looks gentle from above. A moving surface, a line of light, a familiar horizon that makes the planet feel calm and open. But that calm is an illusion created by distance. Beneath it, water becomes something else. An invisible mass with weight, piling on itself, pressing down in every direction, turning depth into force. Tonight we will follow that force, pressure, down through the sea, and watch how it quietly rewrites the rules of life. At the surface, pressure is easy to ignore because it's constant. The atmosphere presses down on everything, always. And the body is built to live inside that steady squeeze. But the ocean adds its own pressure on top of the air. And it doesn't do it politely or slowly in human terms. It stacks weight on weight. It increases without emotion. It doesn't care what's fragile and what isn't. It simply applies the same rule everywhere. The deeper you go, the more water sits above you, and the heavier the world becomes. Pressure in the ocean is not like a hand pushing from above. It is more complete than that. It presses from every direction at once, front, back, sides, above, below, because water transmits force through itself. In the deep sea, there is no downward squeeze only. There is total contact, total insistence, a kind of all-around gravity made physical. This is why deep ocean pressure is not merely a number. It is an environment. It changes how chemistry behaves. It changes how gases dissolve. It changes how cells hold their shape. It changes the way proteins fold into working forms. It changes what it means for an organism to have a body at all. To understand pressure properly, it helps to picture water as a material that refuses emptiness. Every gap is filled. Every surface is covered. Every space becomes part of the ocean's structure. And as depth increases, water becomes a column, kilometers tall, resting on everything below. A column of water 1 meter square and a few kilometers high would weigh thousands of tons. That weight doesn't settle in one place. It becomes distributed as pressure throughout the fluid. The deep sea is built from this distribution. It is a world where the simplest act, existing, means existing under load. And yet life thrives there. That fact is the quiet astonishment at the heart of the deep ocean. Not that life survives by resisting pressure like armor against a blow, but that it survives by becoming compatible with it. Deep sea organisms are not merely tougher. Many are softer. Many are more delicate in appearance than shallow water species. Their survival comes not from brute strength, but from alignment. Structures and chemistry that behave normally under conditions that would destroy surface life. Pressure is the reason that the deep sea is so stable. Storms churn the upper layers. Seasons warm and cool the surface. Waves and currents rearrange coastlines. But deep water changes slowly. Once you sink far enough, the ocean becomes steady, dark, cold, and consistent. Pressure is part of that steadiness. It pins the environment into a certain range, reducing volatility and creating a place where life can evolve specialized solutions over vast spans of time. Those solutions begin with a simple truth. Pressure increases quickly. You don't have to travel far to feel the ocean add weight. Even in shallow water, the body notices. Ears register it. Sinuses register it. The ocean announces itself through discomfort at first, then through silence. Once everything equalizes and the sensation becomes the new normal. But what feels like a mild change to a diver becomes, at depth, a complete rewriting of the physical world. Pressure is often described as the crushing force of the deep. But crushing implies collapse. And the deep sea is not a place of constant collapse. It is a place of constant containment. Collapse happens when there's a difference. Air inside, water outside. a mismatch between what resists and what presses. In the deep sea itself, many organisms avoid that mismatch by eliminating empty spaces. They don't fight pressure with hollow structures. They avoid hollowness. That's one of the first deep sea lessons. In high pressure, emptiness is a weakness. On land, empty spaces are useful. Lungs rely on them. Bones surround cavities. Many animals are built around air-filled systems because air is easy to move, easy to exchange, easy to carry. In the deep ocean, air-filled spaces become liabilities. Gas compresses, volume shrinks. Interfaces between gas and liquid become zones of instability. A pocket of air is a flaw waiting to be punished by depth. So deep sea life often chooses a different strategy. Fluid over gas, density over emptiness, pressure-tolerant chemistry over fragile architecture. This is why so many deep-sea creatures seem gelatinous. It isn't laziness of evolution, it is adaptation. Water supports weight. Buoyancy reduces the need for rigid skeletons, and pressure favors bodies without vulnerable pockets of compressible gas. A soft body can be stable when it is nearly the same density as seawater, and when its internal fluids match the external pressure. In that condition, pressure isn't an enemy. It becomes background. But pressure is never truly passive. Even if a creature's shape holds, pressure still reaches the invisible level. Molecules, reactions, folding structures, and pushes there instead. At the surface, proteins fold into precise shapes, like tiny machines assembled by physics. Their shapes determine whether enzymes can do their work, whether cells can communicate, whether muscles can contract. In deep water, high pressure can disrupt these folds, nudging proteins toward different arrangements, sometimes breaking function. Life at depth must evolve proteins that remain stable under compression, proteins that do not lose their working shape when the ocean insists on pushing closer. Membranes face a similar problem. A cell membrane is a flexible barrier, a thin sheet that controls what enters and leaves. Pressure tends to pack molecules tighter, affecting membrane fluidity. Too stiff, and transport becomes difficult. Too loose, and structure fails. Deep sea organisms tune their membranes with different kinds of fats, adjusting fluidity so their cells can operate normally under extreme conditions. Even water itself behaves differently under pressure. It becomes slightly denser. Its capacity to dissolve gases changes. Chemical equilibria shift. These are small effects in everyday life, but at depth, they add up, shaping which reactions are easy and which are costly. Pressure also affects sound. Deep water carries sound efficiently, and the ocean's pressure profile helps create layers where sound can travel long distances. That's part of why the deep sea can be quiet in one sense and yet full of distant signals in another. Whales, shifting ice, tectonic movement. Vibrations carried through an environment that is physically consistent. The deep sea is not only high pressure. It is high pressure plus cold, plus darkness, plus isolation. But pressure is the constant thread. It is the one condition that never relaxes once you pass a certain depth. Light fades gradually. Temperature drops and stabilizes. Food becomes scarce. But pressure continues increasing with every meter until it reaches values that feel less like nature and more like mathematics. And still, life persists. In the trenches, those narrow, plunging cracks where the ocean reaches its deepest points, pressure becomes almost unimaginable. It presses with a force that surface life would not recognize as survivable. Yet amphipods crawl there. Strange fish hover there. Microbes thrive in sediments there. The very existence of these organisms tells us something important. The boundaries of life are not where the human body says they are. They are where chemistry and adaptation say they are. Pressure forces a question that grows more interesting the deeper you go. What is normal biology? Surface life treats the deep ocean as extreme because the surface defines our baseline. But for organisms adapted to trenches, the surface would be extreme. It would be unstable, bright, warm, and low pressure. An environment where their chemistry would malfunction, where their membranes would behave wrong, where their proteins might fold into useless shapes. Their normal is our crushing. This inversion is one of the most powerful ideas in deep-sea science. It reframes pressure as not just an obstacle, but a selector, a sculptor of living systems. It makes the deep ocean feel less like an alien abyss and more like a separate evolutionary laboratory running for millions of years. To descend into this laboratory, we need to make pressure tangible in a way the mind can hold. How fast it rises, what it equals, and why even small depth changes matter. Because the first surprise about deep sea pressure is not the final number at the bottom. The first surprise is how quickly the ocean starts adding weight at all. And once you feel that climb, even conceptually, the rest of the deep sea begins to make sense. Not as fantasy, not as horror, but as physics shaping biology in the most patient way possible. 10 meters, 1 atmosphere. To understand deep ocean pressure, you don't start with trenches. You start with something almost modest. 10 meters. A distance short enough to swim in a pool, short enough to dive with a single breath if you're trained, short enough that it feels like it shouldn't matter. And yet, in the ocean, 10 meters is the first step into a different physical world. At sea level, you already live under pressure. The atmosphere is not nothing. It is a column of air stretching upward for hundreds of kilometers, and its weight presses down on every surface. You don't feel it because your body is built under it, filled with fluids that push outward with equal force. Pressure, in this everyday sense, is balanced. It's there, constant and invisible. The ocean adds to that balance immediately. Water is far denser than air, and its weight accumulates quickly. For every 10 meters you descend, the pressure increases by about 1 additional atmosphere. That means the deep ocean is not a slow climb into extremity. It's a staircase. And each step is the equivalent of putting another entire sky on your shoulders. 1 atmosphere is a useful concept because it describes a complete environment, not just a number. It's the pressure your lungs and blood and tissues know as normal. At the surface of the ocean, you experience about 1 atmosphere from the air above you. At 10 meters down, you're at about 2 atmospheres total, 1 from the air, 1 from the water. At 20 meters, about 3. At 30, about 4. The pattern continues with calm indifference. This simple rule, 10 meters per atmosphere, is the heartbeat of deep sea pressure. It's the reason shallow water already changes how gases behave. It's the reason scuba tanks empty faster at depth. It's the reason ears complain during descent. It's the reason why the deep ocean, even before you reach anything deep in the popular sense, begins to rearrange physics. To make it more concrete, pressure is force spread across an area. 1 atmosphere corresponds to about 101,125 pascals, or roughly 14.7 pounds per square inch. Those units are less important than what they imply. At the surface, every square inch of your body experiences about 14.7 pounds of force from the air. At 10 meters, it's about 29.4 pounds per square inch. At 100 meters, about 147 pounds per square inch. In the deep ocean, these numbers climb until they stop feeling like weights and start feeling like a different category of reality. But there's a subtle point here that changes how pressure should be imagined. Pressure does not push down like a heavy object. In a fluid, Pressure acts in all directions. It presses sideways, upward, and downward with equal insistence. This is why deep water doesn't feel like a ceiling pressing on your head. It feels like a surrounding presence. Any space inside you that contains gas becomes a point of tension because gas can compress while fluids largely cannot. This is why divers feel pressure first in their ears. The middle ear contains an air pocket separated from the outside by thin membranes. As you descend, water pressure increases, compressing the air pocket unless you equalize it by adding air through the eustachian tubes. The discomfort isn't the ocean crushing you overall. It's the ocean revealing a mismatch between an airspace and a water environment. The deep sea is full of this kind of mismatch, and life at depth often survives by minimizing it. The rule of 10 meters per atmosphere explains why. In a world where pressure rises quickly, air becomes a fragile choice. Any pocket of gas becomes a weakness that must be protected, controlled, or eliminated. This principle also governs how gases dissolve in liquids. Under higher pressure, gases dissolve more readily. That's why carbonated drinks hold dissolved carbon dioxide under pressure and release it when opened. In the ocean, nitrogen and oxygen dissolve into body tissues more readily as pressure increases. For human divers, this creates limits and hazards. For deep-sea organisms, it shapes physiology in ways that are less dramatic but far more permanent. Breathing at depth also illustrates the rule with brutal clarity. If you take a breath from a scuba regulator at 10 meters, the air you inhale is delivered at the surrounding pressure, about 2 atmospheres. That means each breath contains roughly twice as many gas molecules as a breath at the surface, because the air is denser. The lungs fill to the same volume, but the gas inside is compressed. The body receives a higher partial pressure of oxygen, nitrogen, and everything else in the mix. That can be useful within limits and dangerous beyond them. Nitrogen narcosis, for example, isn't caused by nitrogen suddenly becoming poisonous in a new way. It's caused by increased partial pressure changing how nitrogen interacts with the nervous system. The higher the pressure, the more nitrogen dissolves into tissues. And the more it can alter brain function. At deeper depths, oxygen itself can become toxic for similar reasons. Not because oxygen is inherently harmful, but because under pressure, the dose changes. For life adapted to the deep sea, this is not a temporary effect. It is baseline reality. Their chemistry has evolved under high pressure, tuned to function where gas solubility, reaction rates, and molecular behavior are different from the surface world. The rule also explains why the deep sea feels so alien, even when nothing monstrous is visible. The ocean doesn't need teeth or tentacles to become extreme. It becomes extreme through physics alone. 10 meters at a time, it stacks another atmosphere onto everything, steadily raising the stakes for any structure that depends on emptiness. This is why submarines and deep-sea vehicles are built the way they are. They are not threatened by water as a liquid, but by pressure as a force. A submarine hull is designed to resist collapse by distributing stress evenly. Curves matter, spheres matter. Sharp corners concentrate stress and invite failure. Every design choice is a negotiation with pressure. At modest depths, this negotiation is manageable. At great depths, it becomes unforgiving. Even a small weakness can become catastrophic because pressure does not need to get in like a predator. It only needs a difference. If the inside of a vessel remains at low pressure while the outside climbs, the hull becomes a boundary between two worlds. A boundary like that is always under tension. This boundary is exactly what deep-sea animals try to avoid internally. Many deep-water fish and invertebrates reduce compressible gas spaces. They replace buoyancy that surface fish achieve with gas-filled swim bladders with buoyancy achieved through lipids, low-density tissues, or gelatinous bodies. They drift rather than fight gravity, letting water support them. The physics of 10 meters per atmosphere makes that strategy sensible. A gas-filled bladder that works near the surface becomes a liability as pressure climbs. Even when deep-sea fish do have swim bladders, they often have specialized systems to regulate them precisely or to reduce gas volume at depth. Some species that migrate vertically adjust internal gas carefully as they move. Others abandon the strategy entirely because the cost and risk rise with pressure. The way pressure increases also creates ecological layers. The ocean is not just divided by light zones, but by pressure zones. Surface life experiences small variations. Deep life experiences a constant, heavy baseline. Organisms adapted to one pressure regime may not function properly in another, even if temperature and food were suitable. This is why bringing deep-sea organisms to the surface is so difficult. It isn't only temperature shock, it's pressure shock. A creature adapted to hundreds of atmospheres may have proteins and membranes that only work correctly under that squeeze. When pressure drops quickly, their chemistry can destabilize. Their cells may not maintain structure. Their internal fluids behave differently. Their bodies, evolved to exist in a world of compression, suddenly find themselves in a world of release. That release sounds like relief. But for deep-sea life, it can be lethal. The 10-meter rule also helps explain why deep is relative. For a human diver, 30 meters is deep enough to change breathing dynamics and risk profiles. For deep-sea organisms, 30 meters is still a surface world, bright, variable, and low pressure. The deep sea, in their sense, begins where pressure is not merely increased, but dominant, where it becomes the defining constant around which life must be built. It is also worth noticing what pressure does not do. Pressure alone does not necessarily crush living things if their internal pressure matches the external. A fish at depth is not a hollow container resisting the sea. It is mostly water, and water is nearly incompressible. If there are no significant gas spaces, pressure acts evenly across the body, and the body does not collapse. This is the most counterintuitive lesson for people imagining the deep. The ocean's pressure is terrifying primarily to things that contain air. This is why the deep sea can host life that looks soft, fragile, even delicate. Under pressure, softness is not weakness if it is supported by buoyancy and built without vulnerable voids. The deep ocean favors designs that do not need rigidity, designs that flow with the environment rather than resisting it. Pressure also influences the smallest scales of movement. It affects how fast chemicals diffuse. It alters how molecules fit together. It shifts how enzymes accelerate reactions. At the surface, these changes would be too small to notice. At depth, over millions of years of evolution, they become selective pressures. They shape which lineages thrive and which fail. And because pressure increases predictably, evolution can exploit that predictability. Organisms can specialize to particular depth ranges. They can become pressure adapted in ways that make them superbly suited to one zone and poorly suited to another. The ocean becomes stratified by survivability, not only by light and temperature, but by the silent weight of water. If 10 meters adds 1 atmosphere, then a kilometer adds roughly 100. That means the deep ocean is not a mysterious abyss reached by a dramatic leap. It is reached by repeating a simple rule many times. And that repetition creates an environment so different from the surface that it becomes, functionally, another planet layered beneath our own. The deeper the descent, the more pressure begins to dominate everything else. It becomes the constant background condition that shapes bodies, behaviors, and ecosystems. It is the reason the deep sea is stable, the reason it is isolated, and the reason its life forms seem to have been designed by a different logic. Pressure, in the end, is not just a force. It is a filter. It selects for certain forms of life and excludes others. It changes what is possible. It changes what is efficient. It changes what survives. And once that idea is clear, the next question becomes less about numbers and more about consequences. What exactly happens when familiar substances, air, bubbles, even the idea of empty space, are taken down into a world where pressure rises fast and never relents? When air stops behaving like air feels effortless at the surface. It fills spaces without complaint, flows through lungs with almost no resistance, and behaves in ways that match the instincts of land life. You can trap it in a balloon and trust that its volume will stay about the same. You can breathe it and assume the pressure around you is simply normal. But the ocean is where air's friendliness ends, because depth turns air into something that can shrink, dissolve, and disappear into the rules of pressure. The moment you descend, air becomes negotiable. This is not a metaphor. Under increased pressure, gas volume changes. It is one of the simplest laws in physics and one of the most important realities in the ocean. If temperature stays roughly constant, the pressure and volume of a gas are inversely related. Double the pressure, and the volume halves. Triple the pressure, and the volume becomes a third. The rule is clean, elegant, and merciless. At 10 meters, where the surrounding pressure is about 2 atmospheres, any unprotected pocket of air wants to occupy half the volume it did at the surface. At 20 meters, it wants to occupy a third. At 30, a quarter. The deeper you go, the more dramatic the squeeze becomes, and the less air behaves like a stable, reliable substance. This is why the ocean is so unforgiving to hollow spaces. On land, gas-filled spaces are normal. Lungs, sinuses, middle ears, digestive systems, buoyant structures in animals. These are all built around the assumption that air will keep its volume and remain light. In the ocean, pressure turns that assumption into a liability. A gas pocket is no longer a passive cavity. It becomes a dynamic element that must constantly be managed. For humans, this is felt as the need to equalize. Without equalization, the pressure difference across delicate membranes becomes painful, then damaging. But in the deep sea, this kind of management must be permanent, structural, built into an organism's design rather than handled consciously. The most dramatic illustration of gas behaving differently at depth is the bubble. A bubble is a pocket of gas surrounded by water, and in shallow water it seems almost playful. It rises, expands slightly as it approaches the surface, and pops. But in deep water, a bubble is a lesson in physics. At the moment of formation, its size depends on surrounding pressure. A bubble created at depth begins life already compressed. It contains a large number of gas molecules packed into a small volume. As it rises and pressure decreases, it expands, sometimes dramatically, because the constraints relax. This expansion is not optional, it is compelled. If you release gas at depth, it wants to grow as it ascends. That seems harmless for a bubble, but inside a body, expansion is dangerous. A gas-filled space that expands during ascent can damage tissues, disrupt circulation, and cause severe injury if the pressure changes too quickly. That is why controlled ascent is essential in human diving, and why decompression exists as a concept at all. But the deeper story is not about diving practice. It is about what the ocean demands of biology. Fish are a perfect case study. Many fish regulate buoyancy with a swim bladder, a gas-filled organ that allows them to maintain neutral buoyancy without constant swimming. In shallow water, a swim bladder is a brilliant design. Gas provides lift cheaply. But take that design into deep water and it becomes a problem. Pressure compresses the gas, reducing buoyancy, meaning the fish would have to add more gas to maintain lift. Yet adding gas at depth is not simple, and carrying large amounts of gas is risky if the fish ever moves upward quickly. Some fish solve this by tightly regulating swim bladder gas through specialized blood vessels and physiological controls, slowly adjusting volume as they change depth. Others, especially in the deep sea, abandon the swim bladder entirely. They replace gas buoyancy with other strategies: low-density fats, gelatinous tissues, or bodies built to be nearly the same density as seawater. It is not that the deep sea crushes them into softness. It is that gas becomes unreliable, and the deep sea rewards designs that do not depend on it. This is why so many deep water animals seem built from a different material. Their bodies look loose, fluid, almost unfinished compared to the rigid, streamlined forms near the surface. But that impression is surface biased. At depth, where the environment supports and pressure presses evenly, these designs are stable and efficient. They avoid the vulnerabilities that gas creates. Air also changes in another way under pressure. It dissolves more readily into liquids. This is one of the most consequential properties of gases in the ocean. At higher pressure, more gas molecules can be forced into solution. This is why, in human divers, nitrogen absorption becomes significant at depth. Nitrogen is not metabolized by the body. It dissolves into tissues according to pressure and time. If pressure drops too quickly during ascent, that dissolved nitrogen can come out of solution, forming bubbles inside the body, an internal version of fizzing. The body is not designed to be a soda bottle. Again, the deeper point is not about human risk alone. It is about the chemical reality of depth. Gases behave differently under pressure, and organisms at depth must have physiology that accommodates that reality continuously. In the deep sea, oxygen is not simply breathed. It is managed in a world where solubility, diffusion, and chemical gradients are altered by pressure and temperature. Cold water can hold more dissolved oxygen, which is one reason polar seas and deep waters can be oxygen-rich. But the availability of oxygen in the deep ocean is not uniform. It depends on currents, surface productivity, and the slow mixing of ocean layers. Pressure influences how gases remain dissolved, but biology determines how they are used. Deep-sea organisms often live with low energy budgets. Food is scarce, movement is costly. Many animals are adapted to conserve energy, to wait rather than chase. Their metabolic rates are often lower than those of shallow water relatives, not because pressure forces slowness directly, but because the deep sea is an environment where wasting energy is punished by scarcity. Pressure is part of that environment, shaping the kinds of bodies that can exist cheaply. Air, in this context, becomes expensive. Creating and maintaining gas-filled spaces costs energy and risk. Eliminating them simplifies survival. There is also a mechanical aspect to this. Under high pressure, any structure that contains gas is under differential stress. The gas inside compresses, the surrounding tissues may resist, and the boundary becomes a site of strain. In small cavities, this strain can be managed. In large cavities, it becomes a design flaw. Biology at depth tends to avoid such flaws by minimizing compressible spaces. This is why deep-sea animals often lack rigid internal voids, and why their skeletons, when present, may be lighter or arranged differently. Water supports them. Pressure presses evenly, The deep sea is not a place where you must build strong pillars to hold weight in air. It is a place where you must build chemistry that works under squeeze. The strange part is that pressure itself does not necessarily crush a body made mostly of water. If internal pressure matches external pressure, and if there are no large gas pockets, the body can remain stable. The danger comes from imbalance. Air creates imbalance because it is compressible. Water does not. So the deep sea pushes life toward a kind of architectural honesty. A deep sea creature is often honest in density. Its body is what it is, fluid, heavy, and compatible with the surrounding medium. It does not try to be light by trapping gas. It does not try to stay buoyant by maintaining emptiness. Instead, it becomes the ocean in a structural sense, matching it closely enough that pressure loses its power to distort. There is a reason this matters beyond the deep sea itself. When humans build machines for the deep, they face the same choice. Either resist the pressure with rigid hulls and strong materials, maintaining a low-pressure interior, or accept the pressure and build systems that can function while flooded or pressure equalized. Both approaches exist, but the more extreme the depth, the more appealing pressure-tolerant designs become. Life has already run that experiment for millions of years. In the trenches, some organisms live at pressures so high that bringing them to the surface kills them, even if temperature and oxygen are controlled. Their proteins, membranes, and cellular machinery are adapted to a world where pressure is not a challenge, but a baseline. Remove that baseline and their biology becomes unstable. What seems like freedom to surface life becomes failure to deep life. This inversion is a recurring theme. The deep ocean is not merely a harsher version of the surface, it is a different regime of physics. Substances behave differently. Gases dissolve differently. Membranes behave differently. Chemistry shifts, and air, which feels like the default medium of life on land, becomes something closer to a hazard. Even at modest depth, the ocean teaches this. A trapped pocket of air in a mask shrinks during descent and expands during ascent. A balloon behaves like a living thing, changing its size with pressure. A sealed container that seems harmless at the surface becomes vulnerable as the outside pressure climbs. These are not exotic phenomena. They are the everyday laws of gases revealing themselves when the environment changes. In the deep sea, those laws define what kind of bodies can exist. This is why pressure adaptation is not only about strength, it is about design choices. It is about avoiding compressible spaces, choosing fluids over gases, choosing buoyancy strategies that do not depend on trapped air. It is about becoming compatible with a world where emptiness is not stable. But there is still a deeper level where pressure matters even when gas is removed from the equation. Even in a body made mostly of water, pressure influences the invisible machinery of life. How proteins fold, how membranes flex, how enzymes catalyze reactions, how signals travel across cells. Once air stops behaving like air, and once emptiness stops being useful, the next frontier is the cell itself. Because even if the body is pressure equalized, the molecules inside it still feel the squeeze. That is where pressure becomes most interesting, not as a crushing threat, but as a sculptor of life's smallest architecture. The problem with bubbles. Bubbles are simple enough to be beautiful. A sphere of gas inside water, rising toward light, expanding as it climbs, disappearing at the surface with a sound so small it barely counts as an event. In shallow water, bubbles feel harmless. Something children chase with their hands, something divers exhale without thinking. But in the deep ocean, a bubble is not a toy. It is a physical instability. It is a boundary between two worlds that behave very differently under pressure, and that boundary can become dangerous the moment conditions change. To understand why, it helps to treat a bubble not as a floating object, but as a moving pressure experiment. At depth, pressure is higher. That means any gas is compressed. A bubble formed deep underwater is smaller than the same amount of gas would be at the surface because the surrounding water forces it into a tighter volume. If that bubble rises, pressure decreases, and the gas expands. The deeper it begins, the more dramatic that expansion becomes. This is not a special property of certain gases. It is the normal behavior of all gases under changing pressure. The ocean, in other words, turns bubbles into amplifiers. It turns small changes in depth into large changes in volume. This is why bubbles matter in biology. Life is full of boundaries, membranes, tissues, cavities, vessels, and gas introduces a boundary that does not behave calmly. Gas compresses and expands. It dissolves and comes out of solution. It forms interfaces where physics can become complicated. Surface tension, diffusion, pressure gradients, and rapid changes in volume. A bubble in the wrong place is a moving fault line. For human divers, this becomes evident through decompression sickness. But the concept is broader than that one medical condition. Decompression sickness is simply the most famous demonstration of the underlying principle. Gas that dissolves into tissues under high pressure can come out of solution when pressure drops, forming bubbles inside the body. Those bubbles can block blood vessels, irritate nerves, and damage joints. The symptoms vary because the body is complex, but the physics is consistent. Under pressure, more gas dissolves. Under lower pressure, dissolved gas wants to escape. The ocean makes that desire powerful. Imagine the body as a chemical landscape filled with dissolved gases. At depth, the environment pushes gas molecules into solution. Time at depth matters because it allows tissues to absorb more gas. Then, during ascent, the environment removes that pressure. The gas becomes less soluble, and the body becomes supersaturated, carrying more dissolved gas than it can comfortably hold at the new pressure. The gas seeks to escape, and bubbles can form. Bubbles are not just air pockets. They are phase transitions driven by changes in pressure and solubility. They represent gas leaving the liquid phase and returning to the gas phase. In a soda bottle, this transition is harmless and entertaining. In a bloodstream, it is neither. This explains why deep-sea biology often treats gas as something to minimize. It's not only that gas compresses at depth, it's that the transition between pressure regimes turns gas into a risk. Any organism that moves between depths or any system that experiences pressure change must contend with the possibility of bubble formation. Even the act of rising, something that seems like a simple movement, becomes a chemical event. Some animals do migrate vertically. They move up at night and down during the day, following food or avoiding predators. This daily movement can span hundreds of meters, sometimes more. For these organisms, pressure change is a normal part of life. Their bodies are adapted accordingly. Many avoid gas-filled cavities. They manage dissolved gases and circulation in ways that reduce the chance of internal bubble formation. But the deepest specialists, the animals that live permanently far below the surface, often avoid the problem entirely by avoiding the cause. They stay at depth. They do not migrate into low-pressure zones. Their bodies are stable precisely because their environment is stable. Their chemistry is tuned to one pressure regime, and any rapid change becomes catastrophic. This is why bringing deep-sea creatures to the surface is so difficult, even when care is taken. Pressure changes faster during retrieval than their bodies can accommodate. Even if their tissues are largely water, pressure affects dissolved gases and internal fluids. Rapid decompression can produce internal bubbles, expand small cavities, and disrupt delicate structures. The deep sea, in this sense, is not just an environment. It is a commitment. Life adapted to it often cannot leave. Bubbles also matter for a more subtle reason. They represent interfaces. The boundary between gas and liquid is not neutral. It creates surface tension, a force that holds bubbles together and influences how gases exchange between phases. In the ocean, surface tension shapes how bubbles form, how they break, how they carry dissolved compounds, and how they interact with surfaces. In shallow waters, bubbles rising through the water column help oxygenate and mix water at small scales. Wave action and foam increase gas exchange between ocean and atmosphere. But in the deep ocean, bubbles are rare because gas sources are rare and pressure suppresses large bubble formation. When gas does appear, at hydrothermal vents, methane seeps, or decomposing organic matter, it behaves differently. Bubbles may dissolve before they travel far. Gas can be absorbed into surrounding water, disappearing into solution long before it reaches the surface. This is another consequence of pressure. At depth, gases are more soluble. A bubble formed deep can shrink as it rises, not expand, if dissolution outpaces the drop in pressure. Its fate depends on temperature, gas type, and water chemistry. The ocean becomes a place where a bubble can be born, rise briefly, and vanish without ever reaching light. That vanishing is not magic. It is chemistry negotiating with physics. Methane is one of the most striking examples. In cold, high-pressure environments, methane and water can form strange crystalline structures called clathrate hydrates, solid cages of water molecules trapping gas inside. These hydrates can exist on the seafloor where pressure and temperature are right, storing vast amounts of methane in solid form. If conditions change, warming water, lowering pressure, hydrates can destabilize and release gas. Again, pressure sets the rule. Matter rearranges itself according to depth. Clathrates show something important about bubbles. Gas is not always free. Under pressure, gas can be forced into structures and solutions that would not exist at the surface. The deep ocean is a laboratory of phases. Substances that seem simple above become complex below. For biology, this complexity means that gases are not just breathed, they are integrated into a chemical environment where solubility, phase, and exchange behave differently. Organisms adapted to depth evolve within that environment, using strategies that often look strange from the surface, but are perfectly logical under pressure. Consider buoyancy again. A gas-filled swim bladder is essentially an internal bubble, carefully controlled. In shallow water fish, it's a stable, useful bubble. In deep water fish, it becomes difficult to maintain because the surrounding pressure compresses it. To keep the same buoyant force, a fish would need to add gas, but adding gas increases risk during ascent. Moreover, managing gas requires energy and specialized structures. Some deep fish solve this through sophisticated gas glands and countercurrent exchange systems, effectively pumping gases into the bladder against pressure gradients. It's an impressive biological engineering solution. But many deep-sea species avoid the need entirely by using oils or low-density tissues. They replace internal bubbles with chemistry. That substitution is not just about avoiding compression. It is about avoiding the instability of bubbles. A bubble is always a potential for rapid change. It expands quickly when pressure drops. It can also act as a nucleation site, an initial place where dissolved gas can collect and form more bubbles. In fluids, bubbles can seed other bubbles. Once a gas phase appears, it becomes easier for more gas to leave solution and join it. This cascading effect is part of why decompression sickness can be severe. Once bubbles begin forming, they can grow and multiply, disrupting tissues broadly. Life at depth evolves to reduce nucleation opportunities. Fewer gas pockets means fewer seeds. Fewer seeds means less chance of runaway bubble formation when pressure shifts. This brings attention to a key idea. The deep ocean is not just a place of high pressure. It is a place where pressure is steady. Many adaptations are less about surviving high pressure moment to moment and more about functioning normally in an environment where pressure never relaxes. Stability allows specialization. Specialization brings vulnerability to change. Bubbles, therefore, become symbols of mismatch. They are signs of a system that is not fully adapted to its environment, or of an organism being forced into a pressure regime it was not built for. For surface organisms, deep pressure creates mismatch because their bodies contain gas spaces and their chemistry is tuned to low pressure. For deep organisms, the surface creates mismatch because their chemistry expects compression and their structures are built without safeguards against expansion. This symmetry is important. It clarifies that extreme is relative. The deep sea is extreme for us, but the surface is extreme for many deep sea organisms. There is another way. Bubbles complicate the deep ocean. They influence how sound and vibration behave at interfaces. Gas pockets, even tiny ones, can scatter sound waves. This matters in sonar and underwater acoustics. In the upper ocean, bubbles from breaking waves create a noisy, scattering layer that affects sound propagation. In the deep ocean, fewer bubbles often mean cleaner sound channels, allowing certain frequencies to travel far. Pressure and the absence of gas interfaces contribute to the deep sea's long-distance acoustic properties. This is part of why the deep ocean can feel both silent and connected. Locally, it may be still. Yet sound can travel extraordinary distances through stable deep water. The deep sea is not isolated by inability to transmit signals. It is isolated by the time and energy required to move bodies through it and by the scarcity of light and food. Bubbles also interact with biology through behavior. Some organisms create mucus or traps that form bubble-like films. Others produce gases internally through metabolism, though often in small quantities. In high-pressure environments, even metabolic gases behave differently. A gas that would readily form a bubble at the surface may remain dissolved at depth, changing how waste gases are managed. The deep sea forces biology to manage chemistry in ways surface life never needed. Waste, respiration, and buoyancy all change under pressure. And then there is the simplest, quietest problem with bubbles. They represent emptiness. In a world where pressure increases steadily and acts from all directions, emptiness is unstable. A vacuum does not persist in water. A gas space shrinks. Any structure that relies on being hollow must resist collapse. And resistance costs energy and material. The deep sea pushes life toward designs that do not waste resources maintaining emptiness. It rewards density, fluidity, and pressure compatibility. This doesn't mean deep sea organisms are necessarily heavy in the way a rock is heavy. Many are neutrally buoyant, supported by water. It means their bodies are built without compressible weakness. Pressure, then, is not merely a crushing force. It is a teacher. It reveals which assumptions about matter hold and which do not. Bubbles teach the first lesson. Gases are unreliable under pressure change. They compress, dissolve, and expand in ways that create risk. The deep sea responds by reducing gas, minimizing hollows, and turning buoyancy and respiration into chemical problems rather than mechanical ones. But if bubbles are the visible demonstration of pressure's power, they are still only the surface of a deeper story. The most important effects of pressure are not those that break masks or collapse containers. They are those that operate invisibly. Inside cells, inside proteins, inside the microscopic machinery that makes a living thing function. When pressure reaches the level where it can shift molecular arrangements, then adaptation is no longer about avoiding gas pockets. It becomes about making life's smallest components stable under squeeze. That is where pressure stops being a dramatic concept and becomes a quiet, continuous sculptor of biology. Cells under crushing force. Once the obvious problems are solved, the shrinking air spaces, the risky bubbles, the compressing cavities, pressure does not stop. It simply moves inward. It stops attacking the large, visible structures and starts leaning on the small ones, the chemistry, the membranes, the protein machines inside every cell that keep life running. From the surface, it's tempting to imagine pressure as something that only crushes hollow objects. A submarine hull collapses because the inside is low pressure and the outside is high. A sealed container fails because it cannot equalize. But a living body is not a metal cylinder. It is mostly water, and water is reluctant to compress. That fact is the reason deep-sea animals can exist at all. Yet, mostly water is not the same as immune to pressure, because life is not only bulk and volume. Life is arrangement. And pressure has a way of interfering with arrangement, even when it cannot visibly crush a form. A cell is a small, organized environment. It is full of folded proteins, flexible membranes, chemical gradients, and molecular interactions that depend on shapes fitting together with precision. Pressure does not have to flatten the cell to cause trouble. It only has to shift the balance of those interactions. At the simplest level, pressure changes how molecules prefer to occupy space. Under higher pressure, systems tend to favor configurations that take up less volume. That sounds abstract, but inside a cell, volume is not just a measurement, it's a functional parameter. Proteins fold into shapes that occupy space in specific ways. Membranes maintain a certain spacing between their molecules. Enzymes bind to substrates with geometries that require tiny gaps and alignments. Pressure subtly discourages empty space at the molecular scale. This is the heart of why pressure becomes biologically interesting. It changes what shapes are energetically comfortable. A protein is not a rigid object. It is a chain of amino acids that folds into a working shape, and it never truly stops moving. Even stable proteins breathe and flex, vibrating at small scales. Their function depends on that controlled flexibility. A protein that is too rigid cannot shift into binding positions. A protein that is too loose cannot hold its working form. Pressure tends to push molecules closer together, reducing some kinds of flexibility and changing the balance of forces that hold the protein's shape. If the shape shifts too much, function shifts with it. Enzymes slow down. Binding becomes less precise. Reactions drift away from their intended pathways. In a high-pressure environment, these effects can accumulate until the cell is no longer a stable machine. Deep-sea life does not solve this by becoming stronger in a simple sense. It solves it by becoming chemically appropriate. Many deep-sea organisms evolve proteins that are inherently more pressure-stable. That stability can come from small changes in amino acid composition, from different patterns of internal bonding, or from subtle shifts in flexibility that keep function intact even when external conditions push hard on molecular structure. The result is a form of biochemical engineering carried out by evolution. a suite of proteins designed to keep their working shapes under a world that presses in all directions, constantly. This is where pressure becomes a quiet sculptor rather than a dramatic enemy. It does not create a single crisis. It creates a constant background bias. Over generations, that bias selects for molecular arrangements that don't mind being squeezed. The cell membrane is another pressure-sensitive frontier. A membrane is a thin layer of fats and proteins that forms a boundary between inside and outside. It is not a wall, it is a controlled filter. It must remain fluid enough for embedded proteins to move and function, yet stable enough to maintain integrity. Pressure influences how tightly membrane molecules pack together. High pressure tends to compress the membrane, reducing fluidity. A membrane that becomes too stiff can impair transport, signaling, and energy production. Deep-sea organisms counter this by adjusting membrane composition. They often incorporate fats that remain more fluid under pressure and cold, maintaining the membrane's dynamic behavior. This is similar in spirit to how organisms adapt to cold. Because in the deep sea, cold and pressure often arrive together. Cold slows movement, pressure compresses structure. Both tend to make membranes less fluid. Deep life must solve both problems at once. These adjustments are not cosmetic. They are fundamental. If a membrane becomes too rigid, the cell cannot control its internal environment properly. Gradients collapse. Proteins misbehave. Energy generation becomes inefficient. A deep-sea cell must maintain a kind of molecular comfort zone, despite living in a physical environment far outside the comfort zone of surface life. Pressure also affects the chemistry of water itself in subtle ways. Water becomes slightly denser under high pressure. Its properties as a solvent shift. The way ions interact can change. The way hydrogen bonds form and break can vary. In a cell, where chemistry relies on water as the medium for almost every reaction, even small changes can have consequences. And then there is the question of volume changes during reactions. Some biochemical reactions involve transitions between states that occupy slightly different volumes. Under high pressure, reactions that reduce volume are favored, while those that increase volume are discouraged. This is not a moral preference, it is thermodynamics. The deep ocean pressures life toward reactions and pathways that remain efficient under compression. If that sounds like it would force life to be fundamentally different, the truth is more subtle. Deep life is not alien in its basic chemistry. It still uses DNA, proteins, and membranes. It still relies on the same core metabolic principles. The difference is tuning. The deep sea requires those systems to be tuned for a compressed world. The same way high altitude requires tuning for thin air, the core machinery remains recognizable, but the settings are different. This tuning can be so deep that it becomes an identity. A deep-sea organism's cell chemistry may be so optimized for high pressure that low pressure becomes destabilizing. When such organisms are brought to the surface, the problem is not always visible collapse. It can be internal dysfunction, enzymes slowing, membranes behaving incorrectly, proteins shifting shape, until the organism fails. Pressure, in this sense, can invert the definition of safe. Low pressure, which seems gentle to us, can become an extreme stress. There's another layer of pressure's influence that is easy to miss because it doesn't feel like crushing. Pressure can alter the speed at which certain processes happen simply by changing diffusion and molecular movement. In high-pressure environments, the movement of molecules through membranes and within fluids can shift. Reaction rates can change not only because enzymes behave differently, but because the molecules they act on arrive differently. A cell is a choreography of collisions. Molecules bump into each other, bind, release, move on. The deep sea subtly changes the tempo and spacing of this choreography. This becomes especially important for nervous systems and muscle contraction. If ion channels in membranes behave differently under pressure, signaling changes. If neurotransmitter release is altered, behavior changes. For animals with complex nervous systems, pressure can affect sensation, coordination, and response. For simpler organisms, pressure still affects movement through cilia, flagella, and muscle-like fibers. Deep-sea animals often move slowly, but not only because food is scarce. Their physiology is operating under conditions that naturally favor steadier, more energy-efficient motion. When energy is limited and chemistry is tuned for stability, explosive speed becomes an expensive habit. But deep-sea life is not uniformly slow. Some predators strike quickly. Some creatures swim with surprising agility. The key is that their biology supports those behaviors within their pressure regime. They are not slowed by pressure in the way a surface animal might be. They are adapted to it. Microbes offer the clearest example of cellular adaptation. In the deep ocean and within seafloor sediments, microbial life persists under intense pressure, often coupled with low temperature and low nutrient availability. These microbes are not merely enduring. They are metabolizing, reproducing, and shaping chemical cycles across the planet. Many deep-sea microbes are piezophiles, organisms that prefer high pressure. The word itself reveals the point. Not all deep life is merely tolerant. Some of it is optimized to the point where high pressure is the ideal condition. In their world, pressure is not a burden. It is normalcy. Their enzymes may function best under compression. Their membranes may achieve ideal fluidity. Their cellular processes may be most efficient where the water presses hard. This preference matters because it breaks the narrative of the deep sea as simply too much of something. It suggests that pressure can create opportunity. It opens niches. It shapes environments where certain types of chemistry become stable and favorable. Even within the human body, pressure is not always harmful. Hyperbaric medicine uses increased pressure to improve oxygen delivery in certain contexts. The lesson is not that pressure is always destructive, but that biological systems are tuned to ranges, and outside those ranges, function changes. In the deep sea, evolution has extended the range. There is also a structural advantage to pressure-compatible biology: resilience against mechanical stress. In shallow water, waves and turbulence impose constant forces. In the deep sea, the environment is mechanically calmer. Pressure is high, but motion is often gentle. That stability allows delicate structures that would be torn apart near the surface to persist at depth. Feathery appendages, long filamentous structures, fragile gelatinous bodies. These can exist because the deep environment supports them and does not violently disturb them. Pressure contributes to this stability by making the water dense and consistent. But the larger point is that deep sea life trades one kind of stress for another. It avoids storms and turbulence and sunlight variability, but it accepts constant compression and cold. Cells in the deep sea are, in a sense, optimized for reliability. They are built to function in a world where the environment does not fluctuate quickly. This is why rapid changes, especially rapid decompression, are so damaging. Deep cells are not designed for flexibility across pressure ranges. They are designed for steadiness within a narrow band of extreme conditions. This is also why deep-sea research is so challenging. To study deep organisms properly, scientists increasingly try to maintain pressure during collection and observation. Pressure-retaining samplers and specialized aquaria allow deep-sea animals to be kept at near native pressures. making it possible to observe behavior and physiology that would otherwise disappear at the surface. Without pressure, the organism studied is not the organism that lived at depth. It becomes a distorted version, damaged by environmental mismatch. So pressure is not just part of the deep sea. It is part of how deep life must be studied. When you accept that pressure reaches into the cell, the deep ocean stops being a place where life simply survives. It becomes a place where life has been engineered by natural selection at the molecular level. Proteins, membranes, and reactions have been tuned to a compressed world, and that tuning creates creatures that can exist comfortably where surface life would fail. The next step is to understand how these cellular adjustments scale up into whole bodies. Because once cells can function, bodies can be built. And the deep sea builds bodies that look unfamiliar, not because they are bizarre for the sake of it, but because pressure changes what body plans are efficient. The quiet science of pressure becomes visible again when you look at form, at gelatinous tissues, reduced skeletons, dense fluids, and the strange elegance of organisms designed for a world, membranes, proteins, and survival. A living cell is not a bag of fluid. It is an organized system held together by boundaries and machines. The boundary is the membrane, and the machines are largely proteins. Folded structures that catalyze reactions, move molecules, send signals, and build everything else. In the deep sea, pressure doesn't need to tear the cell apart to threaten life. It only needs to make membranes too stiff or proteins too unstable. That is why survival at depth becomes a story of fine-tuning, keeping softness where softness is needed, keeping structure where structure must not fail. The membrane is the first quiet miracle. It is thin, flexible, and strong enough to separate inside from outside without being brittle. Its molecules, mostly lipids with protein embedded, form a fluid layer. Fluidity is not a comfort feature, it is a requirement. Membrane proteins must shift. Channels must open and close, receptors must change shape, and transport systems must move molecules across. If the membrane becomes too rigid, the cell becomes sluggish. If it becomes too loose, the cell loses control. Pressure pushes membranes toward rigidity. It compresses the lipids, packing them tighter. Cold does the same. In much of the deep ocean, pressure and cold are coupled, arriving together as a double constraint. A membrane that is fluid at the surface can become stiff at depth, and stiffness can compromise everything from nutrient intake to nerve signaling. Life at depth must counter this, and it does so with chemistry. One of the most common strategies is altering the types of fatty acids in membrane lipids. Certain fats remain flexible under cold and pressure. Unsaturated fats, with their kinked shapes, resist tight packing. By incorporating more of these into membranes, deep sea organisms maintain fluidity. This is not decoration. It is a survival setting, like adjusting the viscosity of oil in an engine so it continues to flow in freezing weather. But the membrane is not just about fluidity. It is also about permeability. Under pressure, the ways molecules pass through can change. Channels that open at the surface may respond differently under compression. The flow of ions, the movement of water, the diffusion of gases, all of it is pressure sensitive because it depends on molecular spacing and conformational change. This becomes crucial for cells that rely on electrical gradients. Nerve cells, muscle cells, and even many simple organisms use ion gradients across membranes to create signals and control movement. If pressure makes ion channels behave differently, signaling changes. In surface animals taken deep, this can contribute to disorientation or dysfunction. In deep sea animals, the channels are adapted to operate normally under their pressure regime. Adaptation here is not dramatic. It is molecular. A few changes in a channel protein structure can preserve the same opening and closing behavior under different physical conditions. Evolution, working over long periods, can find those changes. This brings attention to proteins themselves. Proteins are the functional core of life. They are folded chains that become tools, enzymes that accelerate chemistry, motors that pull cellular cargo, scaffolds that maintain structure. Their function depends on shape, and shape is not fixed. It is stabilized by a balance of forces: hydrogen bonds, hydrophobic interactions, ionic attractions, forces that are sensitive to the environment. Pressure changes that environment by favoring compact states. It can force water into small cavities within proteins, destabilizing the folded structure. It can reduce the flexibility proteins need to do their work. It can shift the equilibrium between folded and unfolded states. At extreme pressure, proteins can begin to unfold, losing function. Deep-sea organisms evolve proteins that resist this. The phrase sounds simple, but the mechanisms are subtle. Pressure-stable proteins may have fewer internal cavities. They may be slightly more rigid in certain regions and slightly more flexible in others. They may bind stabilizing molecules more readily. Their amino acid composition may reduce vulnerability to water intrusion. What matters is the result. Enzymes continue catalyzing reactions at pressure levels that would cripple surface enzymes. This is why deep-sea biology often reads like engineering. It is the study of systems functioning under constraints, and the solutions are structural. Another major piece of survival chemistry involves small molecules called osmolytes. These are compounds cells accumulate to stabilize proteins and membranes. In many deep-sea fish, one osmolyte becomes especially important: trimethylamine N-oxide, often abbreviated as TMAO. It helps counteract the destabilizing effects of pressure on proteins. It acts like a chemical brace, supporting proper folding and function. The deeper certain fish live, the more of this compound they tend to accumulate. That relationship suggests a direct biochemical response to depth. It also suggests a limit. If maintaining protein stability requires more and more osmolyte as pressure increases, eventually the concentration needed may become too high to be compatible with other aspects of physiology. This may be one reason why certain vertebrates are not found beyond certain depths. Pressure adaptation has costs, and those costs can set boundaries. For invertebrates and microbes, the story is more varied. Many have different osmolytes or protein designs that suit their pressure regime. Some prefer high pressure and function poorly at low pressure, indicating that their entire biochemical landscape is shaped around compression. This preference reveals an important point. Pressure is not just something life tolerates. In some cases, pressure becomes part of what makes life work efficiently. Enzymes may have evolved to operate optimally when compressed. Membranes may reach ideal fluidity only under pressure. The deep sea for these organisms is not a harsh environment. It is home. This is why the term piezophile matters. It means pressure-loving. The concept breaks the surface bias that treats the deep ocean as inherently hostile. Hostility depends on what you're adapted to. A deep-sea microbe may find surface conditions disorienting or damaging, not because the surface is bad, but because the surface is wrong. Pressure also interacts with temperature in a way that shapes reaction speed. Cold slows reactions. Pressure can change reaction equilibria and enzyme performance. Deep organisms must achieve enough metabolic activity to survive in cold, dark environments, often with scarce food. Their biochemistry is tuned for efficiency and stability, allowing them to operate on lower energy budgets. This efficiency becomes visible in the way deep-sea animals live. Many are sit-and-wait predators or scavengers. They conserve movement. They often have slow growth and long lifespans. Their reproduction may be delayed or episodic. These traits are shaped by scarcity, but pressure contributes by making high-speed, high-energy strategies expensive and sometimes chemically difficult. At the microbial level, pressure-adapted survival often means extremely slow metabolism. In deep sediments, microbes may divide only rarely, living in conditions where energy input is minimal. Yet they persist over long timescales, maintaining the deep ocean's chemical cycles. Pressure and cold help stabilize these environments, reducing fluctuations that would disrupt slow-living systems. The deep sea is therefore a place where stability can be traded for speed. The physical environment supports long-term persistence. Pressure is part of that stability. It is unchanging, predictable, and relentless. This predictability allows evolution to carve precise adaptations. But precision comes with specialization. Deep-sea organisms often become narrow specialists, optimized for particular depth ranges. The deeper the zone, the more unique its conditions become, and the more specific the adaptations required. This is why depth can act like a barrier, not a wall, but a gradient that becomes harder to cross as physiology becomes tuned to one pressure. The membrane and protein story also explains why deep-sea sampling is so difficult. If pressure is removed, proteins and membranes may shift into states they do not normally occupy. A deep organism observed at surface pressure may be a distorted organism, not expressing normal behavior because its molecular systems are no longer operating in their designed environment. This is why pressure-retaining technology is increasingly important in deep biology. Without it, the deep sea remains partially invisible, even when its organisms are physically brought up. Understanding membranes and proteins under pressure also clarifies why the deep sea is relevant beyond Earth. If life exists in high-pressure environments elsewhere, beneath ice-covered oceans, on other worlds, in subsurface seas, in deep planetary layers, it would face similar constraints. Pressure-stable proteins, pressure-tuned membranes, osmolyte-like stabilizers. These strategies may be universal solutions to a universal problem, keeping molecular machines functional under compression. The deep ocean becomes a kind of reference laboratory for what life can do when squeezed. Once membranes remain fluid and proteins remain folded, the cell can function. Once cells function, bodies can be built. And the deep sea builds bodies that reflect these priorities. Fewer compressible cavities, more pressure-compatible tissues, buoyancy strategies that avoid gas, and forms that take advantage of the stability water provides. Those bodies often look unfamiliar to surface eyes, but they are logical responses to deep physics. Pressure shapes what is efficient, what is safe, what is worth building. The next stage in this journey is to watch how those molecular decisions scale up into visible anatomy. What does a pressure-adapted body look like? What kinds of structures are favored? What kinds are discouraged? The deep sea answers with designs that are often soft, slow, and strangely elegant. Creatures built not to resist the ocean, but to become compatible with it. Life that prefers pressure. There is a certain way people talk about the deep sea, as if it is a punishment zone, a place where life survives only by clinging on, barely tolerating conditions that want it gone. That image is understandable, because the deep ocean would punish a human body quickly. But it is also misleading, because it assumes that pressure is an enemy by default. For some forms of life, pressure is not an enemy. It is the condition that makes their world work properly. Some organisms do not merely endure high pressure. They prefer it. This preference is not philosophical. It shows up in the most practical way possible. When these organisms are studied at different pressures, they grow better, metabolize more efficiently, and behave more normally at high pressure than they do at low pressure. Reduce the pressure, and their biology begins to drift out of alignment. Increase it, and they return to functioning. To understand why that happens, it helps to remember that life is not built for Earth's surface conditions. Life is built for whatever conditions shaped its lineage. Earth's surface is our baseline because we live there. But for an organism evolving in the deep ocean, the baseline is compression, cold, darkness, and stability. In that baseline, low pressure becomes unusual. The term used for pressure-loving life is piezophile, from the idea of pressure as a defining force. In practice, piezophiles are often microbes, though some larger organisms show pressure preferences too. Microbes are especially important because they dominate Earth's biomass in many environments, and because their physiology can adapt rapidly over evolutionary timescales. They live in deep water, deep sediments, trenches, and even within rocks where pressure is intense. In those environments, pressure shapes every molecular interaction. The proteins and membranes of these microbes have evolved under compression for so long that they function best when compressed. Their enzymes may have active sites that align properly only under pressure. Their membranes may reach ideal fluidity only when squeezed. Their overall chemistry may have become tuned in such a way that pressure is no longer a stressor. It is a stabilizer. This is the strange inversion that makes deep biology so fascinating. High pressure is not always destabilizing. For some systems, it becomes the condition that holds things together. Imagine a machine built to operate in a narrow temperature range. If it gets too cold, parts seize. If it gets too hot, parts warp. But in the proper range, it runs smoothly. Deep sea life often treats pressure this way. Too little pressure, and molecular arrangements become too loose, too flexible, or incorrectly folded. At proper pressure, they settle into the right configurations. This helps explain why pressure adaptation is not simply about resistance. It can also be about dependence. Dependence changes how we think about deep sea limits. If organisms prefer certain pressure ranges, then depth is not just a gradient of increasing difficulty. It is a map of different viable worlds stacked above one another. Each band of pressure corresponds to an environment where certain biological designs work better than others. In that sense, the ocean is not one habitat. It is many habitats layered by pressure. This layering becomes clear when you think about how slowly pressure changes in evolutionary terms. 10 meters is 1 atmosphere. But evolution doesn't care about 10 meters. It cares about niches. Over millions of years, populations adapt to specific depth bands where pressure, temperature, and food supply remain relatively stable. Once adapted, moving out of that band becomes costly. This is why many deep species are depth limited. They are not prevented by some magical barrier. They are tuned. Their physiology matches the pressure where they live. Outside that pressure, the tuning is wrong. In shallow species, the tuning assumes low pressure. In deep species, the tuning assumes high pressure. These assumptions are written into proteins, membranes, and internal chemistry. That is why pressure preference can be so strong. One of the most striking examples of pressure dependence involves microbial growth rates. In laboratories, certain deep-sea microbes can be cultured only under elevated pressure. At surface pressure, they slow dramatically or fail to reproduce. Their enzyme systems are not optimized for low pressure. their cellular machinery loses its rhythm. This has implications for the deep ocean as an ecosystem. Microbial life drives many of the ocean's chemical cycles, including carbon processing and nutrient recycling. If these microbes require pressure to function well, then deep ocean chemistry is not merely surface chemistry transported downward. It is a separate system powered by organisms adapted to deep conditions. Pressure also influences what kinds of metabolisms are efficient. In many deep environments, there is little organic matter drifting down from the surface. Food arrives slowly, in fragments, in rare falls of dead organisms, in marine snow that settles like a constant but thin dusting. In some places, life relies on chemosynthesis instead of photosynthesis, using chemical energy from vents or seeps to build biomass. Pressure shapes these systems by affecting reaction equilibria, solubility of gases, and the stability of certain compounds. At hydrothermal vents, for example, hot, mineral-rich fluids meet cold seawater. Chemistry becomes intense. Pressure helps keep water liquid even at high temperatures. It influences how gases like hydrogen sulfide dissolve and interact. Deep life around vents is not just coping with pressure. It is using the environment pressure helps create. The concept of life preferring pressure also reframes what extreme means. If organisms function best under conditions that would kill us, then the deep sea is not extreme in the universe's terms. It is simply one end of the range of physical possibilities life can inhabit. This matters because Earth is full of high-pressure environments. The ocean itself covers most of the planet, and large portions are deep. The largest habitat by volume on Earth is not land. It is the deep sea. If a significant portion of Earth's life is pressure-adapted and pressure-dependent, then the surface world is not the default. It is one specialized zone among many. That is not a poetic idea. It is a sober accounting of volume. Pressure preference also affects how we interpret the body plans of larger deep-sea animals. Many deep fish and invertebrates are not built like compact, muscular swimmers. They are built to drift, to hover, to conserve energy. Their tissues often contain high water content, low-density substances, and structures that remain stable when buoyancy cancels much of their weight. These traits are often described as fragile, but fragility is contextual. In the deep sea, where turbulence is low and buoyancy supports the body, a gelatinous form can be perfectly functional. The pressure does not crush it, because internal and external pressures are balanced. In fact, the pressure may help maintain its structure by keeping everything compressed in a stable way. Some deep-sea animals have bodies that would collapse under their own weight at the surface. But at depth, in water that supports them, they are efficient and stable. Their fragility is only visible when removed from their world. This is another kind of preference, structural preference. Bodies designed for high-pressure buoyant environments do not translate well to low-pressure gravity-dominated environments. This is why deep-sea creatures brought to the surface can appear melted, distorted, or damaged. They were never built to carry themselves in air. They were built to be carried by water. Pressure preference also shows up in how life manages buoyancy without gas. In shallow fish, swim bladders create lift cheaply. In deep fish, gas becomes hard to manage, so other strategies emerge. Oils, low-density tissues, and specific ionic balances can produce slight buoyancy differences. Some organisms produce substances like ammonium compounds that alter density. These are chemical buoyancy solutions, and they are more reliable under pressure because they do not involve compressible gas volumes. These strategies are not simply substitutes. They are refinements for a world where pressure makes gas unreliable. At the edge of trenches, where pressure reaches its highest values in the ocean, life becomes even more specialized. Here, piezophily can be extreme. Some organisms live nowhere else. Their entire biological identity is built around that pressure. The deep trench becomes not just a deeper version of the abyssal plain, but a separate world with its own inhabitants. Studying these organisms has revealed that there may be upper limits to certain kinds of life, not because the pressure is too high for life in general, but because certain biological architectures, like those of many vertebrates, become too costly to stabilize beyond a point. The need for protein stabilizers, membrane adjustments, and osmolytes may impose physiological ceilings. Yet even where one type of life hits a limit, another type continues. Microbes, with their simpler structures and flexible biochemistry, may thrive at pressures that larger animals cannot tolerate. Life shifts forms rather than ending. This flexibility suggests that pressure does not define a single habitable boundary. It defines a spectrum of viable strategies. And that spectrum tells us something about the universe. If life can be pressure-loving on Earth, then high-pressure environments elsewhere cannot be dismissed as inhospitable. Oceans beneath ice shelves, subsurface seas, deep liquid layers on distant worlds. These could be places where pressure is not a problem, but a normal condition for biology. Pressure preference, then, is more than a curiosity. It is a clue about life's adaptability. But to understand the deep sea fully, we still need to connect preference to form. What kinds of bodies emerge when pressure, cold, darkness, and scarcity all shape evolution at once? What anatomical patterns recur? What features disappear? What body plans become common? The deep sea answers with a set of recurring designs, forms that solve buoyancy, conserve energy, and operate efficiently under compression. These designs are not random. They are predictable outcomes of living in a world where pressure is constant and light is gone. To see those outcomes clearly, it helps to step back from molecules and look at the deep sea body as a whole, as an evolutionary compromise between physics and survival. The deep sea body plan. If you took a shallow water animal and slowly moved it downward, the first thing you would notice is not a change in color or a change in behavior. It would be a change in architecture. Depth selects for certain shapes, certain materials, certain internal layouts, because pressure and buoyancy reward some designs and make others expensive. Over time, these rewards and costs carve out a recurring pattern, what you might call the deep sea body plan. It is not one single form shared by all deep creatures. The deep sea contains extraordinary diversity. But there are themes that repeat often enough to feel like rules, because the physics is consistent. One of the strongest themes is the reduction of compressible spaces. On land, hollow spaces are common and useful. They make bodies lighter. They allow gas exchange. They create insulation. In deep water, hollow space is a weakness unless it is carefully managed. Many deep-sea organisms reduce internal gas cavities or eliminate them entirely. Even when they have internal cavities, those spaces are often filled with fluid rather than gas, allowing internal pressure to match external pressure smoothly. This is why many deep creatures are not built like balloons. They are built like pressure-equalized systems. The second theme is softness without fragility. People often assume that deep-sea animals must be armored to resist pressure. The truth is almost the opposite. In a world where pressure acts equally in all directions and where buoyancy supports the body, rigid support structures are less necessary. Instead, deep creatures often have gelatinous tissues, flexible bodies, and reduced skeletal elements. Softness can be stability when the environment holds you up. In shallow water, Rigidity helps resist waves and currents. In the deep sea, those mechanical disturbances are often weaker. Water movement still exists, but it is usually slower, steadier, less violent. This allows delicate structures to persist. Long filaments, fine sensory appendages, feathery feeding arms, structures that would be torn apart in surf zones. So deep-sea bodies often trade toughness for efficiency. They conserve energy by letting the environment do the supporting. Another recurring feature is a slow economy of movement. Because food is scarce in many deep regions, chasing prey constantly is expensive. Deep-sea predators often rely on ambush, patience, or opportunistic feeding. Even active hunters tend to be energy efficient. This shapes muscle mass, body density, and behavior. Many deep fish have less robust musculature than their shallow counterparts because they do not need sustained high-speed swimming. The ocean at depth is not a place where constant sprinting pays off. It is a place where waiting can be the best strategy. This economy is visible in the way many deep animals float, hover, or barely move, conserving energy like a careful budget. Buoyancy is central to this body plan. At the surface, animals must support themselves against gravity in air. Underwater, buoyancy can cancel much of that weight. Many deep-sea organisms are close to neutrally buoyant, meaning they can remain suspended without constant effort. Achieving neutral buoyancy without gas is an engineering challenge, but evolution solves it through composition. Lipids, low-density tissues, and sometimes particular ionic balances. The deep sea encourages bodies that are chemically tuned to float. This chemical buoyancy can create forms that seem almost unreal. Some deep-sea animals appear like drifting glass, with bodies so delicate that they seem unable to hold shape. But in their environment, they are stable. The water supports them. Pressure equalizes them. Their bodies are not designed to withstand air. They are designed to exist in water. This explains a recurring tragedy of deep-sea exploration. Many deep animals brought to the surface lose their form. They collapse, not because the deep sea crushed them and the surface reveals damage, but because their architecture depends on the physics of their habitat. Remove the buoyant support and consistent pressure, and the design fails. The deep body plan is therefore deeply contextual. It cannot be judged by surface standards. Sensory systems also adapt to the deep. In a world where light fades, eyes change. Some animals develop large eyes to capture faint traces of bioluminescence or residual light. Others reduce eyes entirely, investing in touch, smell, vibration detection, or pressure-sensitive organs. Deep fish often have lateral line systems that detect water movement, allowing them to sense prey and obstacles through subtle fluid disturbances. Many invertebrates have extended antennae or delicate sensory hairs that detect chemical signals. In darkness, the body becomes an antenna, and in high pressure, the medium transmits vibration well. Sound and motion travel far in deep water. This favors sensory strategies tuned to long-range detection. Feeding strategies also shape deep anatomy. Many deep animals are opportunists, adapted to unpredictability. When food is rare, missing a meal matters. Some predators have expandable stomachs, allowing them to consume prey nearly as large as themselves when the chance arises. Some scavengers have wide mouths and strong digestive systems capable of processing whatever falls from above. Others specialize in filtering tiny particles from the water, marine snow, drifting organic fragments, turning scarcity into a steady trickle. These designs reflect a deep-sea truth. In many regions, the ocean is not a buffet. It is a slow delivery system. Pressure plays an indirect role here by stabilizing the environment. At depth, there are fewer storms mixing nutrients, fewer rapid changes. Food arrives mostly from above or from specific chemical sources like vents. This stable scarcity encourages life strategies built around endurance and efficiency rather than speed and abundance. Reproduction also reflects this. Some deep-sea species produce fewer offspring, investing more in each. Others release vast numbers of larvae that drift upward and outward, riding currents until they settle. The deep sea is both isolating and connected. Isolated by distance and pressure, connected by currents that move slowly but persistently. Larval dispersal creates a bridge between depth zones, but pressure differences can still act as filters. A larva that drifts upward may experience lower pressure and higher temperature. It must tolerate that transition to survive. This is one reason why many deep species have complex life cycles, with early stages living in different layers than adults. Even here, pressure shapes what transitions are possible. Another theme in deep-sea bodies is the prominence of bioluminescence. While pressure itself does not cause organisms to glow, the deep environment created by pressure and depth, darkness, stable water, low light, makes light production valuable. Many deep species produce light for communication, camouflage, luring prey, or confusing predators. Bioluminescence is not decoration. It is behavior made visible. In the deep sea, light can replace speed. A lure can bring prey close. A flash can distract. A soft glow can mask a silhouette from below by matching faint downwelling light in the upper layers. The deep sea body plan often includes not just physical structure, but light organs integrated into survival strategies. Yet even with these themes, the deep sea is not uniform. The body plan shifts with depth zones. The mesopelagic zone, with faint light, favors different eyes and behaviors than the abyssal plain, where darkness is total. The abyssal plain, broad and stable, favors endurance and scavenging. The trenches, narrow and extreme, favor specialists that tolerate the highest pressures and often rely on detritus and microbial food webs. Pressure is the continuous gradient linking all these zones, but the ecology changes as other factors shift with depth. What unites them is that deep bodies are often built to avoid fragility under compression and to avoid waste under scarcity. They are built to function quietly. This quiet function can be misunderstood as laziness or weakness, but it is often the opposite, a precise balancing act between physics and biology. Deep-sea organisms are not simply surviving harsh conditions. They are optimized to a stable world where constant pressure, constant cold, and constant darkness make certain strategies sensible and others impossible. When you look at the deep-sea body plan through this lens, its strangeness becomes logical. Gelatinous forms exist because buoyancy supports them. Reduced skeletons exist because rigidity is expensive and unnecessary. Large mouths and expandable stomachs exist because meals are unpredictable. Sensitive appendages exist because darkness makes touch and chemistry more reliable than sight. Pressure is woven into all of this, not always as the main character, but as the background condition that shapes every other choice. And once these body plans are understood, the next step is to see how pressure interacts with the other defining deep-sea constants, cold and darkness, to create an environment where time feels slowed and life becomes a careful negotiation with energy. Depth is not just pressure. It is pressure plus cold, plus the absence of sunlight, plus the long distance from the surface world's daily rhythms. When these elements combine, the deep sea becomes not only physically extreme, but emotionally distinct. A world that feels like stillness made permanent. That combined environment is where pressure becomes part of a larger story, not just about survival, but about how life adapts to a planet where most of its living space lies in darkness under weight. Pressure meets cold and darkness. Pressure alone is not the deep sea. It is the thread that runs through it, but it is not the only force shaping what lives there. As you descend, pressure rises predictably, but two other changes arrive with equal certainty. The water grows colder, and the light fades away. Together, these three conditions, compression, cold, and darkness, create an environment that does not simply challenge life. It reshapes the logic of life. The surface ocean is restless. It is warmed by the sun, mixed by wind, stirred by tides, and changed by seasons. The deep ocean is different. Once you sink far enough, the temperature drops and stabilizes. The daily swing of warmth vanishes. The seasonal pulse fades. The sun becomes irrelevant. Water becomes a cold, slow medium, and pressure becomes a constant background weight pressing on everything that exists within it. Cold matters because it slows chemistry. In general, lower temperatures reduce molecular motion, slow reaction rates, and increase the viscosity of fluids. A warm environment allows faster metabolism, quicker movement, and more rapid growth. A cold environment encourages patience, efficiency, and stability. This is why many deep-sea organisms have slower metabolisms and longer lifespans. It is not because the deep sea is lazy. It is because cold makes speed expensive. Pressure amplifies this in subtle ways. Under high pressure, molecules are pushed closer together. That can affect how proteins fold and how membranes behave. But it can also influence the rates and pathways of reactions. In a cold world where chemistry is already slowed, organisms must ensure that their enzymes and membranes still function smoothly. They must maintain fluidity and flexibility even when both cold and pressure conspire to stiffen their molecular systems. This is why deep-sea adaptation often looks like a layered solution. A membrane composition that counters cold may not be enough under pressure. A protein that is stable under pressure may still function poorly if cold makes it too rigid. Deep life must solve both simultaneously. Darkness adds another layer, one that is less chemical and more ecological. Light is not only visibility. In the ocean, light is energy. Sunlight drives photosynthesis, which produces the organic matter that feeds much of the surface ecosystem. When light fades, primary production fades with it. In the deep ocean, there is no photosynthesis. Energy arrives mostly from above, falling slowly as fragments, dead plankton, fecal pellets, bits of tissue, the steady snowfall of organic matter called marine snow. The deep sea lives on leftovers. Pressure and cold shape what happens to those leftovers. Cold slows decomposition, meaning organic material may persist longer in some deep regions than it would in warm water. Pressure influences how gases dissolve and how chemical gradients form in deep currents. Together, they create an environment where food is not just scarce, but unpredictable. Some days, nothing arrives. Then, suddenly something huge falls, a dead whale, a sinking carcass, a collapse of surface bloom, a rare windfall that can feed an entire community for years. This unpredictability encourages certain life strategies. Many deep-sea animals are built to endure long periods of scarcity and then exploit sudden abundance. They grow slowly, conserve energy, and maintain the ability to eat more than seems reasonable when the opportunity appears. In this sense, cold and darkness are not simply added hardships. They define the deep sea's economy. Pressure, meanwhile, shapes the structure of that economy by stabilizing the physical environment. Deep water does not churn like the surface. Currents exist, but they are slow and persistent. The deep sea is less chaotic mechanically. That stability allows delicate forms to persist. But it also means that resources are not constantly mixed and redistributed. Many deep habitats are chemically stable but nutritionally thin. This combination, stable water, low light, low temperature, high pressure, creates a world where time feels stretched. Life often moves slowly, not only because it must, but because there is no advantage to rushing. A predator can wait. A scavenger can patrol wide areas with low effort. A filter feeder can drift and collect a slow rain of particles. Efficiency becomes the dominant currency. Darkness also changes what matters in perception. In the sunlit ocean, sight is a primary sense. Color matters, patterns matter. In the deep ocean, light is absent or extremely faint. Many animals either develop extraordinary eyes or abandon vision entirely. Some species in the mid-depth twilight zone have large, sensitive eyes adapted to detect the faintest glimmers of downwelling light or bioluminescent flashes. Deeper still, eyes can shrink and other senses expand. Pressure and cold make sound and vibration propagation stable. In deep water, sound can travel long distances. This favors hearing-like systems, vibration detection, pressure-sensing organs, and chemical sensing. Smell, in an oceanic sense, becomes a powerful tool, detecting dissolved molecules drifting through the water column, tracking prey, mates, or decaying matter. In darkness, the body becomes an instrument. Bioluminescence becomes the most visible answer to the absence of sunlight. Many deep species produce their own light through chemical reactions, often using specialized organs, symbiotic bacteria, or glowing secretions. This light can lure prey, signal mates, confuse predators, or provide camouflage. In the twilight zone, some animals use counter-illumination, producing light on their underside to match faint light from above, erasing their silhouette from predators below. The deep sea is not dark in the way a cave is dark. It is dark in a way that encourages life to invent light. Pressure does not directly cause bioluminescence, but it defines the environment in which bioluminescence is useful. In high-pressure deep water, the rules of light and survival change. A small flash can be the difference between finding food and starving, between being seen and being invisible. Cold and pressure also influence the materials organisms use. In shallow water, calcium carbonate structures are common: shells, skeletons, reefs. In deeper waters, carbonate chemistry changes. Cold water can dissolve calcium carbonate more readily, and the increasing pressure affects the saturation state. There is a depth called the carbonate compensation depth, below which calcium carbonate dissolves faster than it accumulates. This shapes which kinds of skeletons persist at depth and which do not. The deep sea therefore reshapes not only soft tissues, but mineral structures as well. This is another example of how physical conditions become biological filters. Certain building materials become costly or unstable. Other materials become favored. Evolution responds accordingly. Cold and pressure together also influence viscosity. Deep water is denser and can feel heavier in a physical sense, affecting swimming and movement. Many deep animals compensate with larger fins or broader surfaces that allow efficient movement through dense water at low speed. Some drift entirely, using buoyancy and currents rather than muscular effort. Others use jet propulsion or slow undulations, strategies that work well in stable, dense environments. Darkness also encourages deception. In the deep sea, there is no background scenery. A moving object is often obvious. Many deep organisms use transparency to disappear, allowing light to pass through their bodies. Others use dark pigmentation to absorb bioluminescent flashes, becoming difficult to see. Some have reflective surfaces that confuse predators. The deep sea turns visibility into a tactical problem. Pressure supports some of these strategies by allowing delicate tissues and gelatinous transparency to persist. In shallow water, transparency can be compromised by wave action and the need for rigidity. At depth, buoyancy and stability make it more viable. Taken together, pressure, cold, and darkness create a deep world that is not simply harder. It is different. It is a regime where energy arrives slowly, where speed is costly, where light must be invented, and where chemistry must be tuned for compression. This is why deep-sea animals can feel dreamlike when first encountered. Their forms are shaped by priorities unfamiliar to surface life. The deep sea also blurs the line between biology and geology. Hydrothermal vents, cold seeps, and deep sediments become sources of energy and habitat. Here, life does not depend on sunlight at all. It depends on chemical gradients created by the Earth itself. Pressure, by keeping water liquid and stable at depth, allows these systems to exist. It creates the conditions under which hot mineral fluids can mix with cold seawater without boiling away, forming sustained chemical environments for life. In these places, entire ecosystems flourish in darkness, powered by chemistry rather than light. This makes the deep sea not just a place where life adapts to pressure, but a place where life adapts to a different source of energy. It becomes a parallel biosphere layered beneath the sunlit one. The closer you get to the trenches, the more these conditions intensify. Temperature remains cold, darkness remains total, and pressure continues climbing. The trenches are where the ocean's physical character becomes most extreme, not in chaos, but in steadiness. The trench is a place where pressure is not just high, it is almost absolute as an environmental constant. To understand what that does to life, it helps to descend into that final zone, the trench world, where pressure reaches its highest values and biology becomes even more specialized. Because the deepest ocean is not merely the deep ocean, just further down. It is its own realm, with its own rules and its own inhabitants, living under a weight that the surface mind can barely hold. That is where pressure reaches its most dramatic expression. Not as a sudden crush, but as a permanent condition shaping the edge of what complex life can be. The trench world. There is a moment in any descent where the ocean stops feeling like a deeper version of the surface and starts feeling like a different domain entirely. Not because the water changes its nature, but because the numbers become so large that intuition fails. The trenches are where that failure becomes complete. They are narrow, steep scars in the sea floor, places where tectonic plates bend and sink, and where the ocean reaches its maximum depth. In those depths, pressure becomes so high that it stops being a detail of the environment and becomes the environment itself. A trench is not a smooth basin. It is a slope and a drop, a long wedge-shaped canyon that can stretch for thousands of kilometers. The Mariana Trench is the most famous, but it is not alone. There are trenches across the Pacific and other oceans, each formed by subduction, each shaped by the slow, grinding motion of plates that move only centimeters per year. The trenches are geological time made visible, and inside them, biological time seems to slow down even further. Pressure here is no longer counted in a handful of atmospheres. It becomes hundreds, and then more than 1,000 atmospheres. Every square centimeter is under an unimaginable load, and yet the water is calm. That calmness is one of the strangest things about the trench world. The surface is where the ocean looks alive with motion. Wind, waves, foam, the constant restlessness of sunlight and air. The trench is where the ocean becomes still, not because nothing happens, but because changes happen on time scales that feel geological. In that stillness, life persists. The first instinct is to ask how anything can survive under such pressure, as if the trenches should be sterile by default. But the trench world is not empty. It is selective. It is a place where certain strategies fail and others succeed so thoroughly that they appear effortless. The survival of trench organisms is not achieved by resisting pressure like armor resisting impact. It is achieved by eliminating the weaknesses that pressure exploits and by tuning biology down to the molecular level so that high pressure becomes normal. The key is the absence of compressible space. In the trench, any significant gas pocket would be a liability. Most trench animals avoid that liability by being built almost entirely from fluids and tissues that equalize pressure. Their bodies do not hold an interior, low-pressure world the way a submarine does. Their bodies match the ocean in a physical sense. The pressure outside is the pressure inside, and because of that, the dramatic crushing imagined by surface life does not occur. But matching pressure is only the beginning. The deeper challenge is that pressure alters chemistry, and chemistry is where life actually happens. At trench depths, the stability of proteins, the fluidity of membranes, and the behavior of cellular reactions are all under constant compression. If these systems are not tuned correctly, the organism does not merely struggle, it fails quietly, because the machinery of life stops working as intended. This is why the trench world is dominated by organisms whose biochemistry is not simply tolerant of pressure, but shaped by it. Many trench microbes and some trench animals are not comfortable at low pressure. They are adapted to the squeeze as if it were a necessary ingredient for proper function. Their enzymes may fold and operate best under compression. Their membranes may maintain ideal properties only when pressed. For them, the surface is not freedom, it is destabilization. In the trenches, the ecological problem becomes just as severe as the physical one: food. Sunlight does not reach these depths. Photosynthesis is impossible. The trench world is fed primarily by whatever sinks from above: marine snow, dead organisms, fecal pellets, the slow drift of organic matter. In the open abyss, that rain is thin. In trenches, something interesting happens. The trench is shaped like a collector. Its slopes funnel sediment downward. Organic particles that settle on the surrounding seafloor can slide or be carried into the trench. Over time, trenches can accumulate more organic material than flatter regions at similar depths, creating pockets where food availability is relatively higher. This does not mean trenches are rich in the way coastal waters are rich. It means they are slightly less starved than the surrounding deep plains, and that small difference matters. Where organic matter accumulates, microbes thrive. They break down particles slowly, recycling nutrients, producing chemical gradients, and forming the base of local food webs. In many parts of the trench, the most important life may be microbial life in sediments. Life that is invisible without instruments, but fundamental to everything larger. Above that microbial base, small animals work the sediments. Amphipods, worms, and other invertebrates adapted to the trench environment. Amphipods in particular often appear in trench imagery, pale, active, and strangely familiar in their shrimp-like form. They are scavengers and opportunists, capable of finding and consuming rare organic falls. Their success in the trenches speaks to a simple truth. In a world where meals are unpredictable, a body built to endure and exploit the occasional abundance is a winning design. Some trench fish exist as well, though there appear to be limits for many vertebrates as pressure increases. The trench environment pushes physiology toward chemical solutions, and those solutions may become increasingly costly for certain body plans. If stabilizing proteins under pressure requires accumulating certain compounds, there may be depths beyond which the concentration needed becomes incompatible with vertebrate biology. This does not create a clean boundary where fish abruptly vanish, but it suggests that the trench world may favor invertebrates and microbes more strongly as depth increases. Even where fish are present, they often exhibit the deep sea body plan pushed toward its extreme. Soft tissues are common. Bones may be less heavily mineralized. Bodies are often built for neutral buoyancy and minimal energy use. Many trench fish do not resemble streamlined speedsters. They resemble careful, steady machines designed for efficiency under constant conditions. The trench world is also a world of pressure-driven isolation. Not because trenches are sealed off, water moves, currents penetrate, particles fall, but because the conditions are so specific that only a narrow set of organisms can live there. The trench becomes an ecological island, a habitat patch separated not by land, but by the gradient of pressure above it. Moving out of the trench is possible physically, but costly biologically. The organisms adapted to trench pressure may not function well at shallower depths. Their proteins may lose stability. Their membranes may behave incorrectly. Their entire internal chemistry may be tuned for a different regime. This pressure isolation shapes evolution. Populations can diverge. Unique species can emerge. The trench becomes a place where evolution runs experiments under constraints unlike those anywhere else on Earth. Studying these organisms also reveals an important caution. Many of the deepest life forms are difficult to understand using traditional methods because traditional methods bring them to the surface. When an organism is retrieved without maintaining pressure, the act of retrieval can change it. Not just physically, but chemically. Proteins that were stable at depth may shift at low pressure. Membranes may lose their proper fluidity. Metabolic systems may slow or stop. Behavior may vanish. What is observed may be the biology of stress rather than the biology of normal function. This is why pressure-retaining sampling has become increasingly important in trench research. To truly observe trench life, scientists attempt to bring it up still living in its pressure environment, or to conduct experiments at depth using submersibles and landers. In the trench world, pressure is not a variable you can casually remove. It is a fundamental condition like oxygen or water itself. The trench also reveals how pressure and geology interact. Trenches are sites of subduction, which means they are connected to earthquakes, sediment movement, and long-term changes in the seafloor. Occasionally, slopes collapse, sediments shift, turbidity currents rush down, carrying organic matter and reshaping habitats. These events are not frequent in human terms, but in trench terms, they are part of the landscape's rhythm. They deliver food. They bury organisms. They reset the sediment surface. Life must be ready for long periods of calm, punctuated by rare, sweeping change. Pressure does not cause these events, but it shapes their consequences. Under high pressure, chemical reactions in sediments proceed differently. Gas formation and release behave differently. The deep environment can trap, dissolve, or stabilize compounds that would behave more violently in shallow water. Even the movement of methane and other gases is influenced by pressure and temperature, which can determine whether gases form bubbles, dissolve, or become locked into hydrate structures. In that sense, the trench world is not just biology adapted to pressure. It is Earth chemistry operating under pressure, with life living inside that chemistry. There is also a psychological quality to trench exploration. Cameras descend into darkness, and the first images are often of fine sediment, scattered debris, and the occasional moving creature. The scene can look barren at first, until the eye adjusts to the scale. Then the details emerge: tracks in the sediment, small animals at the edge of visibility, slow motions that suggest the seafloor is not dead, but inhabited. The trench world is not crowded. It is inhabited in a sparse, quiet way. This sparsity is important. It means that encounters matter. A carcass can become an ecosystem. A patch of enriched sediment can host an entire community. In the trench, space is abundant, but energy is limited. Life organizes itself around energy sources rather than around territory in the usual sense. Even the concept of predator changes slightly in such an environment. Predation exists, but so does scavenging, and so does opportunism. A trench organism must be ready to feed on what appears, whether that is living prey, drifting particles, or a rare fall from above. Adaptation here rewards flexibility within the constraints of pressure, not flexibility of pressure tolerance, but flexibility of diet and behavior. And through all of this, pressure remains constant. It is easy to imagine that the deepest ocean is a place where the ocean is trying to crush life. The reality is quieter and, in a way, more impressive. The trenches are places where life has learned to exist in a compressed world so completely that pressure stops being dramatic. It becomes background. It becomes normal. The drama exists mostly in the mind of the surface observer. This perspective matters because it changes what the trenches represent. They are not merely the farthest place humans can go underwater. They are proof that life can adapt to conditions far outside the surface range, and can do so not by brute resistance, but by biochemical alignment. The trench world forces a final question about pressure. If life can be stable there, what does that imply about other worlds with high-pressure oceans, hidden beneath ice or sealed beneath thick atmospheres? It suggests that pressure itself is not a barrier. The barrier is whether chemistry can be tuned to function under it, and Earth has shown that it can. But before looking outward, there is one more deep-sea reality to confront. What happens when trench life is removed from its world? When pressure is reduced and the deep sea's steady squeeze is replaced by sudden release? The most revealing lessons of pressure often appear not at depth, but during ascent. When the deep environment is interrupted and the body must face a physics it was never designed to meet, bringing deep life to the surface. If pressure is the deep sea's most constant feature, then ascent is the moment when that constancy breaks. The deep ocean is stable in a way the surface rarely is. Steady temperature, steady darkness, steady compression. A deep-sea animal lives inside that steadiness the way a surface animal lives inside air. And then, when humans try to study deep life, we do something that seems simple from above. We bring it up, we lift it through kilometers of changing pressure, and we ask it to remain itself while the physical rules of its world unwind. This is where pressure becomes visible again, not as a number, but as a transformation. The first thing to understand is that bringing an organism to the surface is not just a change of location, it is a change of physics. Pressure decreases rapidly with ascent. Any system inside the organism that relied on compression begins to relax. Any dissolved gases behave differently. Any tissues held in a stable, buoyant environment suddenly find themselves working against gravity in a thinner medium. Even if temperature is controlled, even if oxygen is controlled, pressure alone can be enough to turn a living deep-sea body into a damaged version of itself. The most dramatic failures happen when there are gas spaces. If an organism contains gas-filled structures, those gases expand during ascent as pressure drops. Expansion can rupture tissues or distort anatomy. This is one reason many deep species avoid large gas cavities in the first place. But it is not the only problem. Even without gas pockets, decompression can create bubbles from dissolved gases within fluids. Under high pressure, gases dissolve more easily into tissues. As pressure drops, solubility decreases, and gas can come out of solution. Inside a body, that can mean internal bubbles forming where they never exist at depth. Those bubbles can block circulation, disrupt organ function, and damage tissue. They can also create micro-injuries that don't always look dramatic from the outside. But that can be fatal or behavior-altering. In many cases, what researchers see at the surface is not a normal deep-sea organism. It is an organism reacting to trauma. There is another, quieter kind of trauma that happens at the molecular level. Many deep organisms have proteins and membranes tuned to function under high pressure. Remove that pressure and the tuning becomes wrong. Enzymes may lose the conformation they hold best under compression. Membranes may become too fluid or behave unpredictably. Signaling systems can drift. Metabolism can slow or fail. The organism may look intact, but its internal machinery is no longer operating in the environment it evolved for. This is one of the great challenges of deep-sea biology. Pressure is not just an external condition like rain or wind. It is an internal condition built into how the organism's chemistry works. When pressure changes quickly, the organism is forced into a state it never experiences naturally. Even the body's shape can be dependent on the deep environment. Many deep animals are neutrally buoyant and structurally supported by the surrounding water. Their tissues can be soft because they do not need to stand up in air. When these animals are brought up, buoyancy changes, pressure changes, and gravity suddenly becomes more influential. Some creatures slump, distort, or appear to collapse, not because they were crushed at depth, but because their design assumes an aquatic world with steady pressure and constant support. This is why some deep-sea footage at the surface can be misleading. It can make deep life look weaker than it is. But weakness is not the right concept. The deep sea is simply a different physical regime, and animals optimized for one regime are not guaranteed to function in another. For a long time, this made the deep sea harder to study than it needed to be. Researchers could sample deep organisms and describe their anatomy, but physiology and behavior were harder. What does an animal do when it is comfortable? How does it feed? How does it interact? How fast does it move? These questions are difficult to answer when the animal is stressed the moment it is collected. That is why modern deep-sea research increasingly treats pressure as something that must be preserved, not just measured. Pressure-retaining samplers are designed to collect organisms and keep them at or near their native pressure during ascent. Instead of bringing the deep-sea organism up into surface conditions, the sampler brings the deep-sea conditions up with the organism. This allows the animal's molecular systems to remain in their proper environment. It reduces bubble formation. It preserves normal membrane behavior. It protects pressure-tuned proteins from drifting into unstable states. When pressure is retained, deep organisms often behave differently, more naturally, more actively, more predictably. This tells us something important. Many deep-sea animals are not slow because they are inherently sluggish. They are slow in part because their environment encourages efficiency. But when they are suddenly in a mismatched environment, their slowness can also be a symptom of stress. The difference between adaptation and injury becomes clear only when the environment is preserved. This is also why in situ observation, watching organisms at depth, remains essential. Submersibles and deep-sea landers allow researchers to see life where it is normal. Cameras capture behaviors that vanish at the surface. Baited landers reveal scavengers arriving from darkness. Long deployments show rhythms, how animals appear, how they feed, how they interact, how quickly they respond to an energy source. In these images, the deep sea becomes less monstrous and more ecological. It becomes a place of routines shaped by scarcity and stability, rather than a stage for strange forms alone. There is a second challenge in bringing deep life up: time. Even if pressure is preserved, ascent takes time, and during that time, conditions can drift. Temperature can rise, oxygen levels can change, stress hormones and metabolic changes can accumulate. The act of capture itself, nets, traps, suction samplers, can injure delicate organisms regardless of pressure. Many deep species are gelatinous and fragile. They can be damaged simply by being touched. This is why some of the most successful deep-sea discoveries come not from bringing animals up intact, but from documenting them in place and bringing up small samples for genetics and chemistry rather than whole bodies for display. Deep life is often better understood as data than as specimens. Genetic sequencing allows identification of species from fragments. Chemical analysis reveals osmolytes and pressure-stabilizing compounds. Imaging reveals structure without dissection. The deep sea is pushing biology toward methods that respect environmental context, because context is part of the organism. And yet, the desire to bring life up remains understandable. Bringing an organism to the surface makes it possible to examine it closely, to understand anatomy, reproduction, development, and physiology in detail. The challenge is to do it without forcing the organism into a world where it cannot function. In a sense, deep-sea research is a negotiation between two environments. Humans operate best at surface pressure. Deep organisms operate best at depth pressure. The tools we build, pressure vessels, retention chambers, hyperbaric aquaria, are attempts to create a meeting place. That meeting place is not perfect, but it is improving. Researchers now can keep some deep species alive under pressure for extended periods, allowing experiments that would have been impossible in earlier eras. This has revealed how deep animals feed, how their enzymes behave, how their membranes are built, and how their metabolisms respond to changes in pressure and temperature. The process also reveals limits. Some organisms are so specialized that even slight deviations in pressure are harmful. Others tolerate a range. This variability is itself informative. It tells us which lineages are tightly bound to their depth zone and which have more flexibility. It tells us how depth gradients shape evolution and how pressure preferences create ecological borders. Bringing deep life to the surface therefore becomes more than a technical challenge. It becomes a way of discovering what pressure truly means to biology. If an organism cannot tolerate decompression, pressure is not just an environmental factor, it is an internal requirement. If an organism tolerates a broad pressure range, then pressure is a constraint, but not an identity. This distinction matters when thinking about life elsewhere. If Earth produces organisms that require high pressure, then high-pressure oceans on other worlds could host life that is equally specialized. Studying how deep organisms fail under decompression teaches us which parts of biology are pressure-dependent and which are pressure-flexible. It turns deep-sea exploration into a kind of training ground for understanding habitability beyond Earth. But even without looking outward, the lesson is already profound. The deep ocean is not simply deep water. It is a different physical reality. The organisms that live there are not just surface organisms pushed down. They are creatures whose chemistry and anatomy are shaped by that reality. When we bring them up, we are not merely transporting a creature. We are moving it between worlds. That movement reveals how tightly life can be bound to its environment. It shows that survival is not always about being strong against conditions. Sometimes survival is about fitting conditions so perfectly that leaving them becomes impossible. And that leads to the final question, the one that ties pressure back to the larger meaning of deep-sea science. What does pressure teach us about the boundaries of life itself? Not only on Earth, but anywhere liquid water and gravity create a world of compression? What pressure teaches us about life everywhere? If the deep sea teaches anything clearly, it is that life does not simply exist where conditions feel comfortable to humans. Life exists where chemistry can be made stable, where energy can be gathered, and where systems can maintain themselves long enough to reproduce. Pressure, when viewed through that lens, becomes less like a threat and more like a test, one that Earth's biosphere has passed in ways that are both quiet and astonishing. The first lesson is that pressure is not automatically destructive. It is selective. At the surface, the instinct is to imagine pressure as crushing force, the kind that collapses structures and shatters glass. That instinct is correct for hollow objects that contain low-pressure space. It is correct for fragile containers with mismatched interiors. But living systems are not built like that. Most living tissue is fluid-rich and pressure-equalized. If an organism avoids large compressible gas spaces, then pressure does not necessarily crush it. Instead, pressure becomes something subtler, an influence on molecular arrangements, a continuous bias on chemistry. That bias can be met. It can be adapted to. In some cases, it can be preferred. The existence of piezophiles, pressure-loving organisms, forces a new definition of normal. It shows that there are forms of life whose enzymes, membranes, and metabolic processes are tuned for compression so deeply that low pressure becomes stressful. This inversion matters because it shifts pressure from being a boundary to being a habitat. A habitat does not need to be gentle. It needs to be stable enough for adaptation. The deep sea is stable in exactly that way. Once you descend into the permanent cold and darkness, pressure stops fluctuating and becomes constant. That constancy allows evolution to carve precise solutions. Proteins become pressure stable. Membranes become pressure fluid. Small molecules accumulate to protect folding and function. Body plans adjust to remove vulnerabilities. Over long time, the deep environment stops being extreme. It becomes home. The second lesson is that life has multiple ways to solve the same problem. Pressure affects proteins by favoring compact configurations and by encouraging water to intrude into cavities. Some organisms solve this by evolving proteins with fewer cavities or different bonding patterns. Others solve it with stabilizing molecules that protect folding. Some adjust both. Membranes face pressure-induced stiffening, and organisms respond by changing lipid composition so that fluidity remains in the needed range. Again, there is no single solution. There is a family of solutions. This diversity of solutions is important for thinking beyond Earth. If there is one place where life exists under pressure, there could be many. Because life does not rely on a single fragile trick. It relies on adaptable systems. The third lesson is that pressure interacts with everything else. In the deep sea, pressure is not acting alone. arrives with cold, darkness, and scarcity. It overlaps with chemical gradients at vents and seeps. It shapes the solubility of gases, the behavior of minerals, and the stability of certain compounds. These interactions create environments where energy can come from sources other than sunlight, and where life can build ecosystems without photosynthesis. This is a crucial point. If the only template for life were sunlit surface biology, then many worlds would seem dead by default. But deep-sea ecosystems show that life can be powered by chemistry alone, in darkness, under pressure. On Earth, hydrothermal vents and cold seeps demonstrate that chemical energy can support complex communities. Microbes use chemical gradients to build biomass. Larger organisms depend on those microbes directly or indirectly. Entire food webs exist that do not require sunlight. Pressure helps make these systems possible by keeping water stable under the conditions vents create and by shaping how chemicals mix and dissolve. The deep sea, then, expands the concept of habitability. It suggests that a world does not need an Earth-like surface with warm sunlight and shallow seas to host life. It may only need liquid water, energy gradients, and time. This leads naturally to the question of other worlds with high-pressure oceans. In our solar system, there are moons where evidence suggests subsurface oceans beneath thick ice shells. In such oceans, pressure would be immense, especially if the water layer is deep. There would be no sunlight penetrating the ice. Energy would have to come from chemistry, from tidal heating, from hydrothermal activity, or from interactions between rock and water. The environment would resemble Earth's deep sea more than Earth's surface. The deep sea becomes not just an Earth habitat, but a model. It offers a proof of concept. Life can exist under high pressure, in cold, dark water, powered by chemistry. It provides examples of what adaptations might look like. Pressure-stable enzymes, flexible membranes, stabilizing molecules, slow metabolisms, and ecosystems built around chemical gradients. The deep sea also teaches caution. Life under pressure is often specialized. Organisms can become dependent on their pressure regime. A creature adapted to trench depth may not tolerate even moderate decompression. This means that if life exists in a subsurface ocean elsewhere, it may be even more isolated than deep life on Earth. It would not simply swim up to the surface because the surface might be an ice wall. And even if it could, the pressure change might be fatal. High-pressure life might be confined, stable, and hidden. Hidden does not mean rare. On Earth, the deep ocean is vast. If similar oceans exist elsewhere, they could host large biospheres that are difficult to detect directly. Life could be abundant and yet remain invisible except through indirect chemical signatures. Pressure shapes detection as well as survival. It influences how gases dissolve and how they might escape to an atmosphere. It affects how chemical products are transported. It alters the stability of compounds that could serve as biosignatures. The lesson is that searching for life may require understanding high-pressure chemistry as much as understanding biology. Pressure also teaches something more general about life's boundaries. Many people imagine that the boundaries of life are fixed. Too hot, too cold, too acidic, too pressurized, and life ends. Earth suggests something else. The boundaries move. Not infinitely, not without cost, but significantly. Life can extend into conditions that seem unreasonable at first glance, and it can do so by adjusting the machinery of survival, rather than by changing its fundamental nature. That is what makes pressure such a powerful teacher. It pushes on the machinery directly. It forces biology to solve problems at the molecular level. And those solutions reveal the flexibility of life itself. There is also a humility in this. Humans are surface creatures. our bodies treat pressure change as dangerous. We cannot live under hundreds of atmospheres without technology. It is easy to conclude, from that limitation, that such environments are inhospitable in general. The deep sea quietly corrects that assumption. It shows that our limits are not universal limits. They are local limits. Pressure turns the ocean into a reminder that life is not defined by us. The final lesson of pressure is one of perspective. The deep sea is not an edge case. It is the largest living space on Earth by volume. It is the background environment of our planet, the vast hidden majority of its habitat. If life thrives under pressure there, then pressure is not an exception in nature. It is one of nature's normal modes, and that changes how the universe is imagined. A planet with deep oceans is not necessarily a hostile world. It may be a world where most of life is hidden beneath pressure, living slowly, chemically, quietly, in darkness. A world with thick ice and deep water is not necessarily dead. It may be alive in ways that resemble Earth's trenches more than Earth's coasts. Pressure, in the end, is not just weight. It is time, stability, and selection. It is the force that turns depth into a distinct kind of world. And the deep sea shows that life can meet that force without drama, by becoming compatible with it, by folding proteins that stay folded, building membranes that stay fluid, shaping bodies that avoid emptiness, and evolving behaviors that treat scarcity as normal. The ocean does not announce these lessons loudly. It teaches them quietly, through the simple fact of what lives where the water presses hardest. The deeper you go, the less the deep sea feels like a place where life is barely holding on. It feels like a place where life belongs. Pressure is easy to describe with numbers, atmospheres, meters, the weight of a column of water. But the deep sea reminds us that pressure is more than a measurement. It is a living condition, one that reshapes biology so completely that what feels impossible at the surface becomes normal below. In the deep ocean, survival isn't about fighting the environment. It's about matching it. Bodies give up emptiness. Chemistry learns to stay stable under compression. Movement becomes efficient. Light becomes optional. And life continues, quietly, under a force that never relaxes. The most surprising part is that the ocean doesn't use pressure to erase life. It uses pressure to sort it, to filter it, and to shape it into forms that fit a world most of us will never touch. And once you've truly understood that, the deep sea stops feeling like a distant abyss. It starts to feel like a reminder that most of Earth is stillness and darkness and weight, that life is wider than our assumptions, and that what looks extreme from one perspective can be home from another. If you want to keep exploring calm science journeys like this, deep sea, deep space, and the quiet rules that shape nature, you're welcome to stay with the channel. And whenever you look at the ocean again, even from the shore, you'll know there's a different world underneath it, built not around sunlight, but around pressure.